Welcome to the winter series, freezing cold as always. We are at a stunning complex of lakes in Oxfordshire, that being Standlake Lagoon. So welcome to the winter series. It is freezing cold. Of course it's the winter series, so it's going to be cold. I've got to mention it because I do on all of them. So we are at a stunning complex of lakes in Oxfordshire, which is called Standlake Lagoon. There's 2 day ticket waters on the complex, and the one that we're going to be fishing is Kingfisher. It's roughly around 6 acres in size. There's 300 odd fish in here. And let me tell you, the fish can be a little bit cute in this pond. I know this because I've come and done a day session a week prior to this trip. Now, Tommy, the owner, had found a load of fish in the corner of Kingfisher, and he was feeding them because there's not been a lot of guys on site. So he's been feeding them, and they've been feeding with gusto. I thought it was going to be easy pickings, to be honest. Come down, chucked a couple of D-rigs out, did a day session, went home scratching my head thinking, wow, why hasn't it happened? Now there's a tree opposite which you can get up, gives you a very good vantage point of looking at these fish that are within this small bay of the lake, and there's loads of them in here. I put a bit of bait in, they went down, dropped on the spot, fed. Nothing happened. Very, very odd, to be honest with you. So that's why I'm saying these fish can definitely be a little bit cute. I changed a couple of rigs and it just didn't happen throughout the day. Like I say, day sessions in winter, you don't get a lot of time as it is anyway before it gets dark and you have to go, obviously. So I've been thinking about it all week. Now, I'm not going to lie, I left Tommy a little bit of bait from that day session, asked him to carry on feeding them fish in this area so that we can come back here and hopefully they'll be up for, you know, still feeding, which they have been. Throughout this week, Tommy's just been putting little and often bit of bait into this bay, and the fish have been coming in and obviously feeding with gusto, like I've said. So I've come back a week later in the hope that the fish are still here. They are, they're still in this bay, and joining me on this session is James Anderson. James is going to be setting up to the right hand side of the bay. It's basically sort of as it goes out into the open expanse of water. James is on the edge of them. I'm almost right in the heart of them here, and I'm hoping that we can get a few fish on the bank for you all.
I'm just putting my first rod out. It's on the baited spot across the far side there, so it's the bit that we put that bit of bait round on the marker float. On the end there I've got a bug pop-up with a little mesh bag, just nice and subtle, not too bright on this one. It's quite clear water, so we're going to try a nice subtle bug pop-up, natural coloured one to start with. So I'm just going to put that across the far side there. So yeah, that first cast was a bit to the right of the mark, to be honest, so it's not quite on. I've got two far bank markers, two trees I'm going right in the middle of, and that was probably 1.5 meters to the right, so I'm going to wind that one in and just rechuck it. Always worth, you know, doing that to make sure you're in the right spot and exactly on that bait we put in earlier. So here we go. So second go, just got the bag back on there again. I'm going to give it another cast out just to make sure it's in the right spot on that bait we put out there earlier. It's a lot better. That looks good. Just felt the lead down there. It's quite shallow, but it's pretty firm on that area. So just felt the lead down there nicely. Just going to sink the line now. Just give it a little bit of tension with my hand on the line just there, just to sink it down nicely. Out of the way to stop the wind from getting it. So that's the first rod out on the far margin. The other rod I'm just going to put now onto a little bit of bait, and we're going to spod a little bit of bait onto a gravel area just out there that I found with the marker float earlier. And then the other one we're going to get on the far margin further to the left, as far into Mozza swim as possible. He's given me permission, but I might have to keep going further if we don't catch anything. So just a little PB pop-up on that one, just trying to nick a bite on that one really. We've seen quite a few fish down that way, so I'm not going to put any bait down there. Mozza's put a bit out, but I'm just going to put a PB pop-up with a little mesh bag on there just to try and nick a bite. That'll be nice. So let's see how that goes.
Right, so I'm just going to get a couple of rods ready to be chucked over to the margin opposite. Now, last week when I was here, I just chucked a couple of singles over there because Tommy was sort of feeding that sort of back margin there. The fish were feeding quite hard all the way along the margin. One of the spots looks quite big, and I just basically fished one rod over there with a D-rig, thought this is going to be easy. Well, that was far from the truth. I actually had a bright one fishing onto what was obviously a glowing spot, you know, like gravel over there, and that just didn't work. And whether it was that, putting a white, bright, you know, blatant hook bait onto the area or not, I'm a little unsure. I think that they were just avoiding the rig entirely. Now, I'd gone round there and actually put bait on the spot, and the fish just, like so, was just feeding all around the rig, and it just didn't happen. So that's got me thinking, whilst I've been away for a week, of my best plan of attack for when I come back. And I feel like a solid bag's going to be the most perfect presentation over there. You've got a nice, obviously short rig for them to hang themselves with. That's like 4 inches of rig there. Nice heavy lead, well, heavy lead, I say it's a 3 ounce lead, that is, just a flat pair. And no leader whatsoever. You're not allowed leaders here at Standlake Lagoon, and barbless hooks only as well. So I've made sure that the barbs are completely crushed off of these as well. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go in with the blatant hook bait like I did last time on here. Just going to go in with a subtle bottom bait bug, but as you'll see, I've trimmed a little bit of cork off there and put that on so it's almost wafter style, which I haven't checked yet, so I'm going to check that in the margin, make sure that it's not sticking up. Now, ideally, I want that sort of sitting in a claw shape like so, so it just wafting above. If the hook's lying flat, I don't mind that, you know, if it's lying flat like so, but I think the perfect sort of presentation is where the hook is sort of clawed over and it's prime ready for when it goes into the fish's mouth. I've been round there earlier on. I've put a little bit of bait out because obviously we've been filming James and whatnot. I thought I'd get a little bit of bait in at first. I went round and what I did was actually ball up some bug crumb, which I then mixed with the hydro spod syrup and the liquid food. Now the reason why I've put both of them in there is the liquid food and the hydro, it gives it that little bit more stickiness. It makes the balls of crumb bind together a lot better. When I've done it in the past with just the hydro spod syrup, it tends to break up. It's not as sort of claggy or sticky. So adding that liquid food in as well, it's a really good binder for it. Now the reason why I've obviously chucked them balls in, because I'm going to be fishing solid bags over there, putting balls of crumb in, it's going to be very similar to the solid bag that I'm going to be chucking to the opposite bank. Now I did that a couple of hours ago and got a reaction straight away from the fish. The minute them balls started going in, they just started descending from everywhere, to be honest. So there's a fair few fish here. I would say there was about 20 to maybe even 30 fish sort of milling around in the area over there. They didn't drop on the spot straight away, but they were definitely attracted to the noise. So even a solid bag going over there, I don't think is going to spook them. So that's the tactics I'm going to go in with. I did mix a little bit of the crayfish mini mix pellets in with the boilie crumb, because that's what I'm going to be fishing in the solid bag itself. I'm going to put a little bit of pellet in the bottom of the bag. That will obviously mask the hook point, and then I'm going to fill the rest of the bag up with boilie crumb, well, with the bug crumb, and then I'm going to inject some bug food into the bag itself, get it fired over there, and fingers crossed we can get ourselves a fish on the bank. Let's get the other bag injected. Perfectly on the spot. Now, do I put bait in or not? That is the question. What I might do is I might leave the baiting for an hour or so. I think we've only got about an hour's worth of light left before it obviously gets dark. So I'm going to leave them for an hour, right on dusk, give them a hit of bait, get a load of bug crumb over there, and fingers crossed it's an eventful night.
So we're just coming into the evening now, light levels is dropping, so we've got a little bit of time now just to keep an eye on the water. Hopefully might see a fish show or two. Earlier I've just put a bait out, recast my left-hand rod. After I saw Mozza recasting or just casting his rods out, I thought it might be a little bit tight to that far bank, so wound in the left-hand rod and just dropped it a little bit shorter, rod length shorter. Hopefully that will be a slightly deeper water. That far margin, quite a gentle gradient on the far margin, so I thought it was a bit too high up on there and it was quite shallow, so I've come off about a rod length closer in towards us. Hopefully that's in a good depth of water there, it's about sort of 4 or 5 foot, and that should be ideal hopefully for those fish coming out the snags to my left in front of Mozza and along that margin. Just got that little fluoro PB pop up with a little bag of crumb on that just to try and nab one along there. The other rods are just on the baited spots there. I'm just leaving them now, try and be quiet as I can, and just hopefully some fish will move on to them. I saw a few coots diving on them as well. Not majorly, but they just know they're there. They've been diving a little bit, so I'm hoping we're not going to get too much trouble with them tonight. We really don't want them causing us any trouble, but hopefully they won't. They haven't been too bad so far. So yeah, just keeping an eye out now on the water, and hopefully we might see a few fish or two as the light drops.
Well, good morning. Unfortunately, it's not as joyful as it could be, but you know, I'm trying to stay positive here, to be honest. I had a bite at 3 AM last night on the left-hand rod, which is the rod that's sort of closest to, or right on the edge of the spot over there. Yeah, the bobbin had gone up tight, 2 bleeps, dropped back down, then went back up again, ran out, hit the rod, nothing on the end, unfortunately. And sort of, yeah, a little bit wounded by that, and then got the same rod back out, and yeah, it's gone this morning. Unfortunately, we're actually downloading the cards this morning. We ran out of memory. Schoolboy error. Should have done it late last night, but didn't. And yeah, same rod has just gone, and it's fallen off, would you believe? Sort of had it on for about 20 seconds and it's fallen off. Now, you know, I'm trying to stay obviously positive about it. I've had a couple of bites, so half the job is done here. Perhaps I've just got to tweak this rig a little bit. I think fishing the solid bags, that's definitely the way forward. Having a slightly smaller rig in the bag, everything's confined and sealed. I'm getting bites doing that, so that's half the tactic done here. I think what I've now obviously got to do is just slightly tweak this rig a little. Now, although this lead, as you'll see, can sort of pop out of that swivel quite easily, I think I need to get rid of the lead. So the lead is actually, you know, it's on the line still when you get the bite. I think what I'm going to try and do is, unfortunately, I haven't got some of the stems to use the drop-off stuff, but I could use it with a tail rubber over the top. Just going to slightly tweak this lead arrangement so that when I get the bite, the lead comes away. And with the rig itself, I've got a little bit of silicone on the hook there, maybe using a little rig ring so it's a bit more blowback style. So I'm going to slightly tweak the rig a little. I'm going to keep it exactly the same size because it's obviously going in a solid bag, but I'm going to change that bit of silicone to a rig ring so that once the hook goes in the fish's mouth and it tries to eject it, obviously you get that little bit more play with a rig ring than what you do with the silicone trapping off the hair. So that's the slight tweaks that I'm going to make in the hope that that is going to actually put one on the bank. But like I say, half the job's done here. I've had a couple of bites at the very least, so you know, that's a nice sign. I'm going to bring the third rod into play, and what I'm actually going to do with that is put a couple of foot zig out to the left hand side of the bay, which may be a little bit, you know, pressurising this bay. Like I said yesterday, I didn't really want to do, but I want to try and sort of accumulate a few more bites here if I possibly can. And I think perhaps putting a 2 foot zig out there might be the way forward. But in the meantime, anyway, that's another story. We'll sort that out a bit later on. I'm going to get both rods in. I'm going to make tweaks to both of the rods. I'm going to now have both the rods obviously on the edge of the spot because one of them's in the spot and one of them slightly on the edge, and I've had both bites on the edge. So that is the plan of attack so far. I'm going to catch up with James in a minute, see how his night's gone so far, and yeah, we'll go from there. But in the meantime, need to get these rods back into the water to hopefully get ourselves another bite. Right, okay, let's get this lead off. soon as it's pouring with rain, this is definitely zig weather, I suppose. Don't know what I'm thinking here. But I've got my zig ready, and yeah, it's on the third rod obviously. The 2 bags are out there and on the spot at the moment. This is definitely not zig weather, but as you're up the tree of love opposite, you're looking at the route that they're taking, and as you look at the spot from this side, they're moving from the spot on the right hand side to the left. So I'm going to put this on the route that they're moving between the spot and the sort of the snaggy margin that's over there. I'm not going to have it tight to the margin over there. I'm going to have it about a rod length off. I'm using my favoured black and white zig. It's caught me so many carp, that has. Black and white seems to be my preferred flavour of the zig world, flavour, you know, whatever you want to call it. Heavens have opened up. I'm going to have to get this rod out, stop waffling on and get some breakfast on. God, winter series, whoever thought of it?
Good morning. It's been a quiet night in my swim, unfortunately. We've had quite a windy night, so it's been a lot going on, but I've been watching the water all morning and since before first light, not really seen much showing. So what I'm going to do is have a little change around. Mozza's obviously lost a couple, which is a good sign. You know, it's a bit gutting that he's lost them, but at least it's a good sign the fish are feeding. So what my plan is, because he's fishing along the left bank to me, what we're going to do, I think, is probably cast onto the far bank and maybe use a pole cup to try and manoeuvre a bait a bit closer into his swim. I said I was casting into his swim yesterday a little bit, but it's getting a bit more desperate now, so I'm going to try and go a bit further in. With his permission again, he said that's fine. So hopefully there's a snag there, which is, we've seen a few fish coming in and out of. So what the plan is, get a couple of rods cast over there, get me waders on, put a little bit of bait in a pole cup and pole cup a couple of solid bags into that area, which is how Mozza's getting his bites. So I think that's probably the way to go. I tried a little bit different tactic yesterday, just because it'd be good to try a few different things between the two of us, but that hasn't paid off for me. There's been coots diving on both my baited spots this morning quite consistently now, so I'm pretty sure there's still quite a lot of bait there and not that much fish activity. So what the plan is, as I said, get the waders on, get the pole cup round there, and we'll hopefully try and make something happen. Yeah, so I've just cast the 2 leads over there. So that means that I can go around now. They've just got no rigs on at all, just the leads. So I can go around now, take the leads, try and get them, find them in the trees and the undergrowth there. They're in there somewhere, we'll sort something out, I'm sure. And then we're going to get a couple of solid bags tied on to the end of those, and then we're going to place those with the use of the pole into that margin there. So I'm just going to get my waders on now so I can actually get round, and because it's quite shallow in the margins, I think I'm just going to have to stand in the edge to actually do this. So it's all fun and games. Oh yeah. Well spotted. How many times did I walk underneath that? So I've got the line out of the tree now. I'm just going to start pulling it tight round, trying to get a tight line on it, and then we'll start attaching our rig. It's a good tactic this if you're wanting to present the bait on the far margin. What this has enabled me to do is actually fish further to the left than I actually could cast, because of the way that the trees are and everything. It's a bit too tight to cast around this way, but I can actually, by doing this, fish 2 rods around here, and without too much, well, I say without too much hassle, with quite a lot of hassle, but we'll give it a go. Just going to keep going basically until Mozza shouts at me and tells me to stop. He hasn't shouted at me yet, so I'm going to keep going. Right, I'm just letting him go of the line there now. That's out the way of the reeds, hopefully. So the bag's gone down. A little bit of bait, a couple of handfuls of bait, not a lot. I'm just trying to get a bite. The last thing I want to do is overfeed them at this time of year especially, so get back round, tighten those lines up. Hopefully that's going to do the job. Definitely a lot closer to the fish than what I was, so I'm more happy with that. Fishing a method very similar to what Mozza had his bites on, so that's good. And it's just when you're at a new water like this, in conditions like this, you just got to work through things and tweak it, and hopefully you'll end up with a good result at the end, and that's all we can do. Sweet. Right, let's get back round there.
Okay, well, the day is slowly drifting away from us, and yeah, not a lot's happened, unfortunately, as is it's going to be on these cold wintry days, I suppose. But I've got up the Tree of Love opposite, and the fish have just moved slightly more into this bay round to the left hand side here. So whilst the spot's quiet over there, I'm going to get one of the rods in, the one that I haven't had the bite on, which has been fishing the right hand side of the spot, and I'm going to bunny hop it over. Now, where the light levels are obviously a little bit different now, you can see the spot on the opposite bank from here, and I know I've got room to do that, to bunny hop that rod over, in the hope that, you know, that it might bring that rod into play tonight maybe. As well as that, I'm going to go and put a bit of bait in as well, seeing as the fish have sort of moved left into this bay and it's a little bit quiet over there at the moment. I'm going to go round, put a little bit of bait in, redo that rod, and just leave the other two rods where they are. I'm going to keep the zig rod out tonight. I'm hoping that me pressurising this bay with 3 rods now isn't what's pushed them left. At least they haven't pushed out into the expanse of water to my right, so you know they're sort of in the vicinity still. But yeah, that is the state of play at the moment basically. Let's get this rod in, let's get it, new bag out there, bunny hop it over, and hope for a bite tonight, I guess. We'll catch up with James, see what's going on in his swim at the moment, which his swim's become more my swim, of course, but you know, I'm obliged to let him come as close as possible because this is where the fish are at the moment. So anyway, enough waffling on. Let's get these rods, or rod in, and get this sorted out, ready for the night ahead. Just retied my bag, got the rod wrapped up, 11 1/4 wraps. Now I'm obviously going to bunny hop it over. Same thing as, you know, I've started with. Got a little bit of the bug food injected into the bag, a little bit of bug crumb in there, and some crayfish mini mix pellets as well. So I'm going to just get this fired out to the left hand spot, move this rod over. So let's get that one moved over first, and then obviously once this rod's out, we'll do the same thing as yesterday, put a little bit more bait out from the Tree of Love. Don't know why it's called the Tree of Love, I've just decided to call it that. Seeing where the bubbles are coming up. So every time you, obviously when you fish with a solid bag, once it's melted you'll get a burst of bubbles come up. May look bang on to me there where the bubbles are coming from, because you'll be surprised if you're fishing to a clip how much it can spring back sometimes to where the bag's actually landing. So that look bang on. Sorted. Right. Go and get a bit of bait in and get ourselves a fish. Come on, the carp.
So the day's drifting past a bit now. We've had a little bit of a flurry of activity to get those rods sorted out. We've got them all with the baiting spoon on that far side, but hasn't produced anything yet. There's still a few fish down that end. We've had a little scout round and they're definitely down in the back of the bay, so I'm hoping as the light starts to fade now we're going to get a bit of activity. They might start coming out of the back of the bay there and they maybe feel a bit safer. So we haven't changed anything for a few hours. I've obviously done quite a bit of work to get those rods into position, so I'm just going to let them fish now. I've moved my other rod. I've got 2 rods with the baiting spoon on the far side. I've moved the other one down to my left, the margin between me and Mozza, because while I was down in his swim earlier, I saw 3 fish head up the margin out of the bay. So because of that, I thought, right, it's worth having a little rod down there just to cover that base as well. The other spots haven't really done much in open water that I baited yesterday. The coots, I'm looking out there now and they're still diving on the bait. I put 5 spods out yesterday of Boilie and crumb on that little gravel hump and they're still diving on it now. So I don't think there's been much fish activity out there. So yeah, I've got that left hand one down the margin and then the other 2 with the baiting spoon as you saw earlier. So not much more I can do now. Just cross our fingers and see what this evening and tonight brings. So we've come to the end of our session here at Standlake Lagoon. It's not really happened, unfortunately. It's been rough conditions. You can see the wind and the rain have been hacking us all night through, and it's been pretty rough. But unfortunately, the fish just haven't played ball. We've tried everything. As I said, we tried moving the rods around yesterday, tried changing tactics, being as proactive as we can, but there's only so much you can do, and you've got to leave some of it up to the fish, unfortunately, and they just weren't up for it, and not quite played the game as we hoped they would. But anyway, you live and learn. We've learned a lot from this session, I think. We've got a few things under our belt that we could bring back and come back another time if we wanted to try and make it happen, but it's always going to be a bit hit and miss. So this time it didn't happen, but there's always next time, and that's what makes it fun.
Well, like James has just said, the session has unfortunately come to an end. For me, last night, the wind and rain was relentless. I did have a liner at 1 AM on that same rod that I had a couple of bites on yesterday, which obviously got me up for a few hours and was sort of waiting till that 3 AM time and nothing that come and passed. But at 7 o'clock this morning, that same rod pulled up tight, pulled out the clip, couple of clicks on sport, thought he's on. Ran down to it, and as I'm running towards the rod, unfortunately the bobbin was dropping back, nothing on the end. The lead was still on, hook was still razor sharp. Back to the drawing board with that one. To be honest, this, as crazy as this may sound, this part of it all is what I really enjoy in my fishing. For my own fishing, it's working all this out. It's that cat and mouse, it's tweaking things, changing things. Doing things to get you that bite is what fuels my fire for me personally. So I'm going to come back here and we're going to try and finish this off by obviously showing you the struggle that we've had already. Whilst we've been here for a couple of days, we've tweaked a few things, we've done things to try and buy a bite. We've blanked, we have had a couple of bites. I would like to come back here and put this to bed by hopefully putting a couple of fish on the bank. So watch this space. I'm going to get the rods in now. Unfortunately, I've got to get home, and yeah, I'm going to come back with a vengeance. Going to have a little think about it whilst we're at home. This is what I find we do as anglers. You get them blank sessions and then you go home and you're more fueled up for it for when you come back to hopefully attack them and put a few fish on the bank. So I'm going to get these rods in, go home, get my thinking cap on and get back here to try and put some fish onto the bank for us. Back for round 2 then. God, it's been minus the whole way up here, and we are back at Standlake Lagoon. Been thoroughly looking forward to getting back here. One thing we've always wanted to do at DNA was show a video that had a bit of realness to it, and what we mean by that is obviously you go into a place blanking. Would someone watch a video that's got a blank in it? Probably not. So we think this is probably the best way of doing things. I was obviously last here 2 weeks ago with James Anderson. I've come back myself because a lot of the fish are just huddled in this corner on this lake. You'll get that winter time where the fish tend to huddle up in one area of the lake, and 9 times out of 10 it's only that area that does bites. So we've left James at home. I've come back on my own, and I've been racking my brains since last being here of what rig is going to slip these fish up. Now I think we've got the baiting side of things nailed down to a T because we obviously got bites last time we were here. I just think it's a few more tweaks that I needed to do with the rig, and I think I've got the rig that is going to trip these fish up that are obviously very tricky to catch in Kingfisher Lake. So it's a little bit flooded as well. There's a lot of flood water about at the moment. It's obviously snowing. Wouldn't be the winter series without a bit of snow, would it? And like I say, I'm thoroughly looking forward to this trip. The fish are still here. I've spoken to Tommy, the owner, about where they've been for the last few weeks, and they have just stayed here basically. So we've come back to the same swim that I fished last time. Gonna fish the same area, but this time with a new rig. Trying to get a bit more warm clothes on, I think. And let's get some rods out in the hope that we can catch ourselves a nice winter carp. Boy. Okay, so this is the rig that I've come up with whilst at home at the last couple of weeks in the hope to trip up one of these very riggy fish that are in Kingfisher Lake. Hook bait wise, stuck with the same thing as before. I've added a little bit of cork on there below that half a bottom bait bug hook bait. Now the reason why I've added more cork, I want it really critically balanced, this hook. And the reasons being is I want this rig to fly up into the fish's mouth the minute they get anywhere near it. Now how that will happen is, as you can see there, I've got a huge loop on the solid bag rig. So as you can see there, the loop that moves up and down. Now what you can do, or what we used to do, is actually tie that off to the lead via some PVA string or tape. But what I've done is basically, or what I'm going to do, should I say, is pull that loop forward. So drop this into your solid bag like you normally would, and then you can grab hold of the loop with the long baiting needle and pull that back so it's alongside the lead, and then carry on putting the rest of the pellets in there. Now that will hold the loop in place on impact, so when it's dropped onto the bottom of the lake bed, that loop there is completely free from the rig. So the minute the fish suck up the hook bait, you almost get that extra 2 inches back instantly into the mouth, because that loop's obviously not attached via the swivel where you would normally have it. So what I've basically done is I've just got a huge loop up through with the knot in the centre of the rig. So yeah, it's basically free moving, as you can see there, along the rig ring. It's all fished drop-off style like I normally would. But yeah, I think that is what's going to be their downfall. And I think the minute that they suck that hook bait, you're going to get at least 2 more inches of hook link in the back of their mouth before they even realise it. So that is what I think is going to catch us some fish whilst on Kingfisher. Let's get this tied up into a solid bag, get the rods out into the pond. I think I'm only going to fish with 2 rods, and with that I'm not going to go up the tree to bait up like I did last time. What I learnt from last time by going up the tree and putting bait in is that they come to the sound of the noise. So this time round I'm going to spod. I'm going to basically every sort of hour or so just put 2 spods in. I'm going to put a bit of bed of bait out at first. I'm going to put about 10 spods out there. Bug crumb again, and 2 mil pellets. put the 2 rigs out there, or solid bags out there with the new rigs in, of course, and then every hour or so just keep topping it up, making that little bit of noise, ringing that dinner bell every hour with the spod, in the hope that it's going to buy us a bite. But yeah, like I say, last time we had bites, we just didn't put fish on the bank, and I think this is the rig that's going to do that for us. Look at him showing us his dorsal as well. One of the elusive kingfisher fish, this one. One of the ghosties that we've seen up on that tree a few times. And yeah, well, they're all elusive in here, but I think the ghosties are just that little more elusive than the others. So to get my hands finally on one of these fish, and for that rig to do the damage as well, I'm absolutely over the moon. About 14 pound I would say he is, but it's -2 now, maybe -3 by about now. It's going to get up to around about -5, 6 tonight, so it's going to be cold. But yeah, this fish is freezing. My hands are freezing, but I couldn't be happier. Yes! Nice. Well, good morning, and as you can see, we have woken up to a frozen kingfisher, unfortunately. Yes, that's put a dampener on things. It was obviously very, very cold again last night, hence the frozen lake, and I suppose most people would probably pack up and go home right about now, but that's not happening. What, in it on that film Wolf Street or something, where he goes, "I'm not leaving!" and everyone screams and shouts. This is when you're meant to scream and shout, oh. I think that's the last thing he wants to do. But I'm catching another one from here, even if whether it kills me or not. You know, it's I really want to get another one from Standlake. So yeah, I'm gonna break the ice around my lines, get the rods in, get packed up. There's a bit of wobbly water up at the end of this pond, I'm going to have a go up there before the day ends and try and catch you at least one more fish, because they are stunning in this place. And yeah, I'm determined to get that one more bite I've been desperate for. So that's what's going to happen. We're not leaving just yet, and I'm hopeful that we're going to catch another one. So yeah, although it doesn't look great, does it? Right, let's get these rods in, let's get packed up, and let's get on a bit of wobbly water.
I'm not leaving!
Stay away, you. Well, same procedure as we've done throughout the whole trip. I've just spotted out a fair bit of bug out there, to be honest. I've put 10 big spoms out towards this, what I was thinking was the tree. Obviously I had the sun in my eyes, but now the sun's gone in, I know exactly, it definitely is the tree that I was hoping to be aiming at. And I found a lovely bit of pea gravel down there as well whilst chucking the lead. Got one rod out already, solid bag, same procedure, solid bag, crayfish mini mix in there, half a bug hook bait as well to match in with the crumb that I'm putting out, obviously. Let's hope this works, fingers crossed. So let's get this other rod out and get ourselves a bite. Right, well, we've finally managed to hook one. It's down here in the edge, unfortunately. Got some camera dramas. It's winter time, it's going to happen. But the right hand rod's just busted off. The whole day's passed without much happening. And there's nothing more in the world that I want at the moment than this fish to go in the net. It's a proper lovely looking one as well, as they all are in this place. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, come on, come on. Yes, yes. Oh, the relief, the trauma. Oh, well, it was well worth the move. It was well worth staying, even though when it just looked so bleak for it not to happen. We finally got one in the net. Yes. Oh, I'm over the moon. Absolutely buzzing. Nice, nice, nice. We got one. Here he is. Absolutely made up with him. Let me tell you, I think, like I said earlier on, I think most people would have gone home after seeing the lake frozen, but just look how mint this fish is, and this is the reason why I wanted to stay that little bit longer, just to catch another one of these gems from the wonderful Standlake. Absolutely amazing. I am over the moon with this fish. Might not be the biggest in the world, but in these conditions, this time of year, none of that matters. Them little tweaks with that rig to put fish on the bank when they're being a little bit tricky, you know, makes all the difference in my eyes. We got the baiting right, we just had to get that rig. Just, you know, them little tweaks can put fish on the bank like this beautiful one. Over the moon. Right, let's get you back to your freezing cold home, and it's time for me to go back to my very warm home. Yes! God, it's cold. Yes, got one.